how does one get started in political advocacy and that whole game, I guess you could call it?
For me, it was the 2000 campaign when George W. Bush was running against Al Gore. I was in college at the University of Wyoming, and I fell in love with the political process back then. I had to walk 7 blocks, DC blocks, to Union Station to a payphone to call family to let them know I was still alive. So those were the tough days. I would start my day around 7:30 or so, and then I would end at 2 or 3 in the morning and then start all over again. So, I mean, it is a boom and bust town.
Right.
So if oil and gas prices are good, then things are good. If not, then folks are hightailing it out of town. What motivates me today is paying my mortgage and making sure that my kids' college fund is well stocked. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't make you right. We need to make America feel like home again.
Welcome back to the He's Wrong, She's Right podcast. I'm Andrew. This is Nona, and today we are joined with Ryan Taylor of a bunch of projects. Met Ryan through Baker Leavitt of basically all the fames as well. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. Nice to see you, Nona. It's great to be on the platform.
Yeah, so as we said on the call, Baker is he's a very exciting person. He's got one of those personalities where he's kind of always moving, always working on something. And he introduced us, but didn't really tell me anything about you. He's just like, here's my guy, talk to him. And I'm like, cool.
So why don't you introduce yourself to our podcast following?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, and Baker's one of a kind. There's no doubt about it. It's hard to pin that guy down. He's got so many projects going. But yeah, so I'm Ryan Taylor, and I am a 20-year veteran of politics and policy, and I've been living in Washington, D.C. now. That entire time, I have worked for 4 U.S. senators, a member of the House of Representatives. I've run 2 statewide campaigns, one of whom is for Senator John Barrasso, who's hopefully going to be the next majority whip in the U.S. Senate. And also ran the Wyoming Republican Party when I was just a lad. And now I'm working on a variety of projects, from helping to get veterans to quit smoking, to getting like-minded conservatives out to vote, and a variety of other political and policy advocacy campaigns.
It's awesome. So I guess, we'll jump right in. How did you... I guess, first of all, we'll go back to Baker real quick. How did you meet Baker?
So Baker was introduced to me by a mutual friend here in Washington, and we've been working on a couple projects together. I'm very pleased to be working with him on the team. He provides invaluable insight into understanding not just the social media world and podcasts and so forth, but truly tapping into what conservatives are thinking, and our veteran community as well.
So I saw, I know a bit about Baker. He and I have followed each other, friends on social media, but we never really had an interaction. And like I told you on the phone, he messaged me one day on Instagram, of all places. Of all the platforms that we follow each other on, he messaged me on Instagram and asked if I was a host of the show. And I was like, yeah. And the conversation was kind of weird at first. And so I reached out to some of my friends at Black Rifle that I know would have had his contact. He was like, here's my number, give me a call. And I was like, I reached out to Matt Leviner at Black Rifle. I was like, is this his real number? Is this like...
Am I being scammed?
Yeah. And he's like, he reached back out a couple hours later. He's like, I confirmed with a couple of people. Yeah, it's definitely him. And everybody says the same thing. It sounds exactly like Baker to reach out like that. So, good to know that I wasn't. Good to know that his account wasn't taken over for any reason.
Yes.
He's involved in some Killcliff, Black Rifle.
Yep.
A lot of political awareness, Smokeless Vets. I actually probably don't even know half the projects he's involved in. I feel like even his LinkedIn profile isn't updated. Is yours?
Mine is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even have a LinkedIn.
You're not missing out on it.
That's spam. 440 Strategies, Forbes Tate Partners, Perspective Strategies now.
Yeah.
How does one get started in political advocacy and that whole game, I guess you could call it?
For me, it was the 2000 campaign when George W. Bush was running against Al Gore. I was in college at the University of Wyoming, and I fell in love with the political process back then. I got to meet Bush when he came all the way to Cheyenne one February morning. And of course, Dick Cheney was his running mate and from Wyoming. So that, that really boosted my interest in the whole process. And I was fortunate enough to get an internship with my home state senator, Craig Thomas, in 2002, and came out to Washington for about 4 or 5 months and got just bit by the bug hard. And when I left Wyoming, finally in 2004, I came out here with a suitcase, $300, no place to live, no job. I just knew that this is where I wanted to be.
Culture shock, right?
Fortunate. Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
I cannot imagine going from Wyoming to DC with only $300. That is wild.
Yeah. Oh, my parents were so angry at my choice. And they gave me I didn't even have a cell phone back then. They gave me one of those calling cards.
Oh my gosh.
That if I ran out of money and I needed to come home, I can call it and they'd come get me. But
that's true love right there.
20 years later, I'm here.
And you still have the card untouched.
Yeah, right. I don't know if it made it in a couple of the movies, but it's somewhere.
That sounds like like a business or a restaurant when they get their first dollar, they'll frame it. That seems like your success. Frame your what were they called? 10, 10, 2, 20. Wasn't that one of them? Like it wasn't necessarily a calling card, but it was like a collect calling service.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I still remember that. I still remember some of their commercials, and now it's going to live rent free in my head for the next month.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I was staying on a friend's couch, and I stayed there for a couple of months. I ran out my welcome, I'm sure, with her, but I had to walk 7 blocks, DC blocks, to Union Station to a payphone to call family to let them know I was still alive. So those were the tough days, and my first job working for Senator Mike Enzi from Wyoming, those entry level jobs, especially 20 years ago, didn't pay anything,
right?
Barely enough to cover my rent. So I would go to receptions after work and eat the food. That was my dinner. And then I got a job working as a bartender at a local hill restaurant. So I'd go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get home about 3 a.m.
I'm sorry, I gotta interrupt you real quick. My dog's
puking. Is throwing up right behind me.
Wait 1 second. Sorry about that, everyone. I have a diabetic dog, and she decided she wanted to puke in the house while we were recording. So sorry for interrupting you there. We left off. You were talking about the struggles of getting started in the Game of Thrones in the U.S. government.
And my situation is not unique. There are thousands of young people on Capitol Hill trying to make their living, at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. And I was mentioning that I had a second job working as a bartender at a local watering hole. So I would start my day around 7:30 or so, and then I would end at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then start all over again.
Holy moly!
I did that for a long time, too long. But if you grind it out and you work hard and you pay attention to what's happening, and just like any other job or life, networking and friends, and those all come along with it. And I was really grateful to have been able to meet some wonderful human beings and work my way up the ladder, so to speak.
So were you able to make any connections at that local watering hole as well? You said a lot of people frequented there, so maybe that also helped with your networking.
Not in terms of the patrons, but my fellow waiter went on to go. He worked for Arlen Specter, if y'all remember him from Pennsylvania, back when he was a Republican. But my friend went on to work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and a whole variety of kind of regulatory agencies in that field. So, and has gotten the opportunity to work with him in the past 20 years as well.
Nice.
So what I was starting to ask is, did you have a job lined up before you left for DC, or did you just hopes and
No,
dreams?
he said that.
Well, I knew he said he had $300 in his pocket, but
No, he said he started with nothing lined up.
Nothing.
it's wild. It sounds like the same story that people on the West Coast have with, trying to get into acting and all that. It's like, I don't know that I would want to go into either one of them. So how does, I'm assuming small town. What was the population in the town you were from, Wyoming?
9,000. It's a small town called Rawlins, Rawlins, off of Interstate 80 between Laramie and Rock Springs. There ain't nothing out there,
So
except for a lot of oil and gas wells.
What was your graduating class from high school?
120.
Oh my gosh.
That's bigger than I thought you were going to say. That's wild. I went to a school with over 1,100. So.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And she went
we
to
weren't nearly that big. We were about 450 or so. It's significantly shrink in population since I left. I think the graduating class last year was probably around 80 to 90.
Is that a result of just not enough jobs, or is that people just not wanting to be in a small area and flocking to the bigger metropolitan areas?
I think a combination of all of it. The coal mine about 40 miles out of town had closed down, and a lot of jobs left with that. The refinery, I think, had some expansion, and then some reduction in jobs over the course of the years as well. So, it is a boom and bust town.
Right.
So if oil and gas prices are good, then things are good. If not, then folks are hightailing it out of town.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I always kind of wonder, at heart, I always dream of living in a place like that where my closest neighbor is a mile away. And she doesn't like city living, but she loves this beach living. She likes the quick access to the beach at any point in time. I'm not so much of it's not that I don't really like the beaches, that I don't really care for saltwater beaches, like the ocean and stuff. I grew up near Lake Michigan.
I ask him almost every single day, why the did you move to North Carolina then? Why? If he doesn't like anything about North Carolina, why would you move to North Carolina? You obviously moved to DC because you wanted that life.
I had the flexibility. I don't have to chase a specific
Doesn't
job.
make any sense to me at all.
I have family here in the area that, I vacationed here as a kid and stuff. So it was I went back home after I got out of the Army and was like, this was a mistake. Not that getting out of the Army was a mistake, but going back to my hometown was a mistake. And I just didn't like it. I didn't want to be there. The same people were doing the same things I did before I joined the Army. I didn't like running those circles, and it's kind of hard to, break into new groups and things. And I was like, I'm just going to go somewhere else entirely, and moved here. I've been here for almost a decade already.
And he hates every minute of it. So anyways, when you were in Wyoming, what was your degree when you were in university? Was it poli-sci? Was it?
Yeah, it was.
What was your minor?
I didn't have one. I started with a communications major.
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, when 2000 hit, I knew I needed to make the switch because I was so enamored with all of it.
So do you like to, work for the interests of like farmers and agriculture and things like that, or just general values that are in line with kind of where you grew up? What kind of things motivate you, I guess I should say?
What motivates me today is paying my mortgage and making sure that my kids' college fund is well stocked. But I do have an inclination toward agriculture, energy, public lands, conservation too. I'm a diehard Republican, conservative. I think conservation is an important part of our party's platform. Having multiple use of our public lands while making sure we can get energy from it, but also to protect it for future generations of Americans and my kids, so they can hunt and fish and get out there and camp as well.
What percentage of Wyoming is public land? Do you know by?
Oh yeah, gosh, it's over 60%.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just saw, I didn't actually watch the video, but I just saw a thumbnail for a video regarding how little of the state of Nevada is owned by the state. And so that's what kind of sparked that question.
Yeah, I think Nevada's over 80% public lands.
It was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
What kind of use does the land in Wyoming get to? Is it mostly farmland, like Bureau of Land Management type stuff, like you see in like Yellowstone, or?
Yeah, it is mostly BLM land. On the eastern side of the state, there's a lot of agriculture, certainly a lot of corn, a lot of wheat, and up in the northwest corner toward Yellowstone, we grow a lot of soybeans. But mostly it's ranching and grazing, and a lot of our Forest Service and BLM lands have long-term grazing leases on it for ranchers to get their cows in and get fed, and and sheep too. I cannot underestimate the amount of sheep we have in Wyoming.
Interesting.
My friends back home would be really pissed off if I had neglected to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely would never think of sheep in Wyoming. I only think of cattle.
Lots of sheep.
Interesting.
Was your family involved in any of that, or were they in coal mine, or?
No, yeah, my father and my brother, my brother-in-law, they're all in oil and gas. My mother and my sister are both in real estate. I don't know if you've heard of Saratoga, Wyoming. It's a new popular spot. Everyone thinks of Jackson Hole as obviously being the most popular place to go in Wyoming, but Ivanka Trump just went to Saratoga not too long ago for a wedding. It's gorgeous, and that particular community is really blowing up, and we're about 40 miles from there. So my mom and sister have done well in that field. But I come from a farming ranching background. My grandparents had a ranch in southern Montana, and my family's been out there since the 1870s.
Oh wow!
So yeah, they've been ranching a long time out there. I'm the one who came east; they went west.
So would you consider yourself almost the black sheep of the family then? You definitely have separated yourself from everybody.
Animosity? Anybody?
In terms of lifestyle, yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yep.
Any animosity? Anybody mad that you left?
Or not at all. No, none.
Good. I've always, you see the drama play out on shows like Yellowstone, which we kind of stopped watching after probably like season 4, I think, when it started kind of getting weird. But you wonder how much of that would really would actually happen in real life versus what they dramatize for a show to keep people hooked and everything like that. But you talked about having the family, having the kids and stuff. She loves talking about that part. How does being in politics affect that dynamic with your? I'm assuming you're married as well still, or
yep.
How does that affect everybody?
It doesn't. My wife is tangentially part of the political process as well. She does government affairs for a federal agency here, so she's well in tune with what's happening in Congress and the White House and politics in general. She's a Southern girl. She's from New Orleans originally, and we met. Actually, it's a funny story, one that I'm happy to share. We met in Senator Roger Wicker's office, and she was in the office next to me. She did energy policy for the senator back then. Gosh, that was 11 years ago. And there was an anti-fraternization rule in the office.
Oh.
One of us would have to resign if we had started dating, and the senator was very kind and changed the rules for us so that we could stay together. And he went to our wedding and still takes credit, and
absolutely, and rightfully so.
You got it, rightfully so, for the family I have now.
That just
How
shows
many children do you have?
I was just gonna say that shows too that he likes both of you to go out of his way to do that.
Yeah, I got 2 children, James and Charlotte, and James is 6 and Charlotte is 4.
I have a Charlotte too.
Oh yeah, fantastic! What a great name.
Great name.
Yeah, all four kids' names start with a C. That was their trend. Cooper, nice. Chloe, Charlotte, and Cash.
There you go. Very cool.
So, what's it like raising kids in DC? Yeah, everything people outside of DC sees is like DC crime, right? Nobody ever sees.
Oh no, I was thinking expensive private school for your children.
They do go to Catholic school. Yes, that's true. There are plenty of, I think, good public schools where we are. We've chosen a different path. I think having a little Jesus in their lives is probably a good thing. But yeah, we have enjoyed living here. We are just across the river in Northern Virginia.
Okay, I was actually going to ask if you were actually in DC or if you were in the suburbs.
I'm in the suburbs. I'm in Alexandria.
Okay.
And so it is.
I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
It's much different here. It's not unlike the lives you all are living right now.
Right.
In terms of soccer games on the weekends.
Only I'm pretty sure it's like double the expense to live in Alexandria than it is to live here. Same size house, same everything would be like $1 million, whereas it's like 500,000 here.
Probably true. Probably true.
So, my uncle, who passed away a couple of years ago, when he retired from the Army, he went to work for the U.S. Census Bureau, and he was living out in the mountains out there, and he was commuting into D.C. I think his commute was like an hour both ways or something like.
On a train?
Yeah. Well, he had to, because they lived on a mountain, he had to go to a point where they would carpool, like the whatever group of people. So they would all park at like the base of the mountain, and then they would ride to whatever train station, whatever they would take. And then from there to the Census Bureau and then back every day. And I was like, man, you would think after serving 21 years in the Army, you would want to like relax, but he wanted to get his 30 in government work. And that was what they wanted to do.
That's a grind.
Yeah. What's your commute like?
I can be downtown if I time it right in probably 35 minutes.
That's not bad at all.
You probably know all the stoplight patterns and traffic patterns and stuff.
Yes, and I live just off the George Washington Parkway, so there's very little traffic going into town until you hit Old Town Alexandria. And because I got the kids in the car, I can do the HOV lane, so I can scoot right through.
You figured out the loophole. Just keep popping out those babies.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's funny. That is really funny and good to know.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I've never really seen people take that seriously. Like, so I'm from Indiana originally, and like Chicago kind of had, some of those lanes and stuff, and they also have like dedicated parts of the highway and the Dan Ryan Expressway and stuff where it's kind of like that, where if you're passing through, you stay on one part of the highway, but if you're local traffic, there's a separate with more frequent exits off one part, and then there's less frequent, if you stay on the main highway. Do they pretty strictly enforce that there, or do they have like the transponders or?
They do. If you're taking one of the interstates, they will.
Yeah.
But off the parkway and through the city part, if you will, of Alexandria, they don't take that very seriously. But yeah, I just scoot right through.
They probably want to avoid pulling over the wrong politician too.
Well,
they don't give a damn about that.
Yeah,
I can assure you.
That's good. They shouldn't. Don't treat anybody with preference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Until you get the people that get on, you're like, you know who I am? No, I don't.
Have a Justin Timberlake situation again.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we're very grateful. It's nice to have a Catholic running for vice president of the United States. So we're having a refreshed love of all things St. Mary's these days.
You think they're setting him up for 2028?
If we're not successful in November, certainly he's got an inside track for it. He's extremely articulate, and very smart, and he's got a great story.
You just said we. Are you working on the campaign?
I am not. No, not on the presidential.
He's saying as a whole.
No, I understand. I was just making sure there wasn't more there.
Oh, yeah. We get hit all the time by YouTube for talking anything politics. So I'm gonna have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get this one to get traction on there.
Gotcha. All right, fair enough.
As I was saying on the call, they're something that's successful on YouTube kind of flops everywhere else, which I guess is kind of on par with the audience that the different platforms attract. But being everywhere, being on Rumble, being on YouTube, being on Spotify and Apple and everything else, and then Substack and things like that, kind of gives us the ability to do a little bit more. And we run like promotions to grow like the show and things like that. And YouTube absolutely hates if you say anything.
How about that?
I went through their process of getting certified for like election advertising, because even just saying a politician's name.
So like perfect example, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Western North Carolina, and I was upset that the president had flown in and prevented people from being rescued for a whole 12-hour window. And just saying the president not only suppressed the video, removed all views, like it was wild just because I said the president. So now I've said it 3 times. So this video is totally screwed.
Our average video talking about how YouTube treats some of the stuff. Do you see any of that kind of like the shift, like with Elon and X and things? Do you guys see anything moving through DC in terms of like policy to kind of open up public discourse a little bit better?
It's an excellent question. The federal government at this moment still allowing, and probably I go back and forth on this in terms of allowing private companies. I mean, they're public now. Meta, X is a private company now, certainly, but allowing them to show the content that they want to. There's something to be said, like there's a reason why there are investors for these particular platforms, but this shadow banning that is happening across Instagram, Meta, TikTok, what have you. Certainly we're not facing it with X anymore. But yeah, there's something got to happen here in terms of federal regulation for suppressing free speech, 100%. And there are a wide variety of members of Congress who are interested in pursuing this. And, hopefully if we take control of Congress fully and put Donald Trump in the White House, in just a matter of weeks, we can start moving on some of this.
If you could make a change, what would it be?
In terms of the social media?
Or just
the algorithms, the way that they are built, suppresses conservative speech, and that has just got to stop. I don't know who's watching the watchers for this, this misinformation, and there's just a hierarchy here that has got to be dismantled in some way to allow differing opinions.
Yeah,
I saw a quote. I just saw a quote the other day. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't make you right.
Right.
And we've got to remember that in terms of freedom of speech, and it's got to get back into our cultural dialogue.
I've seen what it looks like in some ways. It almost seems like where they are opening things up, they're using that as a method to weaponize it. Like we took all the restrictions away, and now look what's happening. People are, making threats to these different groups of people or these politicians or whatever. And they're like, you don't want that to happen. Right. So it feels like every time there is a change for the positive, for one, you have people that abuse it, but then you also have people that are trying to take the opportunity to say, see, we told you. And I mean, it sucks. Like she was super emotional talking about, her family's property out in Western North Carolina that got hit with the hurricane. And that video I knew wasn't really going to be able to get good traction because we talked about it. And I put a little bit into promoting it on other platforms that I knew would pass through traffic. And it was one of our lowest videos in the last couple of months, but it still had close to 400 views just strictly on YouTube. And yesterday when I was going through working on stuff for this week, YouTube had removed all but about 18 views. So, and
wow.
When people look at that, they say, okay, this video is published a week or two ago and it only has this many views. It means nobody wanted to watch it, so I don't want to watch it either. It creates that self-fulfilling cycle where not only did it not gain a lot of traction organically previously, but now it's not going to ever.
Yep. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Really unfortunate.
And, people say, oh, don't talk politics and don't do this and that. But I mean, everything is in some way, shape, or form. You can't talk about anything happening in your life, hurricane response. We can't talk about that because that leads back to politics. Talk about sports. Everybody in sports is talking about politics. Like it removes everybody's ability to have any sort of conversation at all, even if we're not necessarily trying to promote or, change anything. Even being able to mention names is difficult.
Yeah. You touched on something here that's really important because, we were doing some research on why people, there are 10 million plus hunters and gun owners in this country who aren't registered to vote and don't vote.
Right.
And the fact of the reason is, we have learned through some research is one, they don't think their vote counts. And they think it's rigged. Politicians don't keep up to their promises anyway, so what does it matter? But also, to your point here, everything does touch politics, and they don't connect the dots between, I'm a rancher or a farmer, and I am complaining about some EPA regulation that I'm going to have to start abiding by on my land, and that's just being dictated by some bureaucrat. Well, that bureaucrat's in their job because of the president of the United States.
Right.
They're able to just flood all these federal agencies with acolytes, on the left wing of left wing. And we can be part of our own solution here. And that is to get out and vote. That is the one solution we have to our problems today. And, if 10 million gun owners and and hunters get out, we win everything.
Yeah.
And it's absurd.
I saw a conversation came up a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of changed my thought, and kind of one of the things that I thought about for a long time. I remember growing up, not very many people spoke about politics. They might have, you might have in school, hey, here's what's going on in the country. Here's what's at stake in this election. But nobody, it was always, don't talk about your politics. Don't bring it up. Don't go to the family Thanksgiving and have a fight with your uncle. Like, don't do any of that. And
money, politics. Those are the two things you're not allowed to bring up at the holidays.
Maybe a little bit of religion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Religion.
And so everybody said we should go back to nobody talking about politics. But the point that somebody brought up in this conversation was maybe it was wrong to prevent people talking about it at that time, because then nobody ever learned how to talk about it.
Right.
Nobody can have a civil conversation about it because we were told for the longest time, don't talk about it. And now everybody is, dug in on their views and their the things that they want to see happen. And now they can't have a conversation, or they don't want to have a conversation. They're just like, I'm just going to, what I think is right, and here's what I want to happen, and you're wrong if you disagree with me. And they can't find any common ground. But when you look at basically all of politics, it's all compromise all the time.
And it's why Washington is completely dysfunctional, because there is no ability to come together and actually work on solutions.
How would you change the functionality of DC?
Well, that's a deep question. one I might have to talk off the record about.
Okay.
But look, I think there are a number of really good lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, I'm a Republican, so I have my thoughts on the direction this government should take. But there are plenty of good lawmakers who are in office right now who do care about the country and who are looking for solutions. And we have, those particular folks need some room to maneuver from both sides. It's the far extremes of both that don't allow for really positive, thoughtful policy to advance. And it's really unfortunate because I do think that there are lots of solutions at hand. We all know some of our biggest problems. We know the answers to these.
Right.
We're just not able to do it, not able to get the political will or the political capital, rather, to advance it.
Do you feel like it's fueled by hate?
Probably from some demographics, it's hate, and also ignorance. Probably a lot of it too, just plain old ignorance.
So I've kind of wondered more recently than anything, if you really were to get rid of the two-party system and just ran candidates from wherever, strictly on policy and things that they want to bring to the table. And I've wondered, because everybody, in order to really affect change, people. So I'm a registered independent. I have, for the most part, voted more conservative in my life. In the last election, I voted for Joe Jorgensen. But 2A advocate, veterans rights advocate, those kind of things tend to be more on the conservative side. So I wonder how much more effective some people would be if they didn't have to choose a side, right? Like if somebody who is actually an independent could say, I'm running on these values and I shouldn't have to run against the guy that's 90% in line with me, we should be able to work together.
I think there will come a time when a third party, a more independent kind of alignment can happen. But it's so cyclical from Teddy Roosevelt running on the Bull Moose Party platform in the early 20th century. I mean, we saw what Robert Kennedy was trying to do this cycle even. It's just, I don't know that our country is built or our Constitution is built in such a way to allow for a really strong third party. I think we have what we're going to have. I think what is troubling is that Ronald Reagan used to have this 80-20 rule where we can agree on 80%, just about 80% of the issues of the day. Let's get a budget. Let's fund the government. Let's stop abdicating so much power to bureaucrats in Washington. The Congress has given up so much power in the last 20, 30 years to allow federal agencies to just do what they want to do, which is why I think the Chevron case that the Supreme Court just decided this past year to kind of claw back some of that congressional authority and make lawmakers literally spell out for the agencies what they want them to do. They were generalizing so much of the law and allowing the federal agencies to do what they want inside of those parameters. So I think if we are able to get Congress to do their job, which is fund the government, create a budget. Let's focus on the small things right now. Let's just get those things done. I think we can all agree on those kinds of things, and allow the executive to administer and execute those laws and claw back that power from the administrative point of view, and the judges too. I think there's far too many, especially on the left wing side of it, activist judges out there who are trying to make law by interpreting it, If we were to get closer to the Constitution and what our founding fathers had set out for this country, I think we wouldn't be having so many of the political problems that we are having today. Let's just focus on doing the job that Americans sent these people to do, and let's do that.
So
I rambled. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I was just thinking about this, because we're already into the politics, like deep into it now at this point. So, with Fetterman in Pennsylvania, everybody thought that Pennsylvania was, it's not even a swing state; it's just a blue state, and it looks like they're putting a lot of effort into it. Do you think that Fetterman kind of opened that door because he kind of became a centrist and has a lot more conservative leanings? I guess people are saying that the stroke gave him a hard reset, like he was a computer or something. Does that look like that's what happened out there?
I don't think so at all. I think Pennsylvania lawmakers traditionally have had kind of an independent streak. Arlen Specter, I brought him up earlier in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very moderate Republican. He switched to Democrat late in his career. Senator Toomey, he's a conservative senator, conservative person, but he worked with, I believe, I can't remember the senator's name now, from Connecticut, but on some gun reform law, for instance, and rightfully so, earned the ire of Second Amendment supporters. So I think you've had a streak of independent lawmakers coming from Pennsylvania. I think Fetterman's just the latest in a string of them. I love seeing lawmakers like that in terms of it not having to fit into one single mold. You look, say what you will about Mitt Romney, for instance. I think he's a statesman. I certainly disagree with some of his votes, casting impeachment votes against President Trump. But the man spoke his mind, and you knew where he stood, and I'm very comfortable with that. And I think the William F. Buckley rule is vote for the most conservative person who can win an election. That's where I stand. So I'm hopeful, like a Larry Hogan, for instance, out of Maryland, can get elected, because I think the Republican Party needs that kind of moderating voice to accompany, perhaps, hopefully, Kerry Lake wins in Arizona, so that we can, expand the party's tent and embrace a wide range of ideological views.
What do you think of? They just came on my radar over the last year or two, since I've been more, back on X and Twitter before it changed. FPC, the Firearms Policy Coalition.
I'm not familiar with that one.
They, I don't know, if they have any specific law firms that they are or work with, but they've been fighting a lot of cases, in the Supreme Court level and things like that, clawing back a lot of gun rights laws and things like that. And they are active on social media, to say the least. And recently, you're familiar with Daisy, Red Ryder BB guns?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
They, I don't know who their social media manager is, but they came onto Twitter with a vengeance a couple months ago. They had, a handful of followers. The accounts existed for a long time, but they had maybe 100, 200 followers, and they weren't following anybody. They started following people within the mil Twitter space and the gun tuber space, and their account has exploded. They have like 100,000 followers now in just a matter of a couple months. And they're, even a BB gun company, they're trying to advocate for firearms rights, Second Amendment rights and things like that, because there's interpretations of laws in states like New York where even a kid can't own one, or if you do own one, you can't go out in public with it because there's a potential that it looks too close to the real thing, and you run into issues with that. I don't want to say the issues, but there's been stories in the news where stuff like that has happened, which is super unfortunate. But at the same time, like it looks like we're getting wins kind of on that front. What are you thinking?
I'm just listening.
I was trying to bring you back in, get you more involved. But back to the family stuff then, before we wrap up here in a little bit. Where do you think is the better place to be raising a family? Do you think if you could do your job from Wyoming that you would do it from there?
Well, that's a delicate question because I'm not sure my wife loves the cold winters that would accompany a Wyoming life.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I loved growing up in Wyoming. There were freedoms that I was able to enjoy that I certainly wouldn't be able to here as a young man. One of them, just driving out on public lands in a big old pickup truck and trying to blow up as many snowdrifts as I could, and going hunting after school, and heck, even having my guns in the truck at school because a bunch of us would run out south of town and try to get our deer before the sun went down. Certainly can't do that here. But there are benefits certainly here to, it was a one elementary school town, a one middle school town, a one high school town. Not a lot of room for diversity isn't the right word for it, but
opportunity,
a more expanded worldview that I think is important in today's global world.
So why not New Orleans or Louisiana then?
Too damn hot. I was not built for the heat.
Yeah. I can't really walk outside very often in North Carolina and not sweat.
Again, why do you live here? I don't understand. Why do you live here?
I mean, I like it. There's things that
I can't think of a single thing that you actually like here.
I'll think of something.
Long pause.
I like
nothing.
you. I found you here. So that's why he likes DC, because he found his wife in DC.
It's true.
Okay.
So yeah, we alluded to your work with Matt Kinney and Baker with Smokeless Vets and Vote for America. We're too late to get people registered, but obviously we want to get people out to vote. But tell us about Smokeless Vets and how you got kind of tied up in that.
Yeah, it's a terrific mission, certainly to get 1 million veterans to quit smoking cigarettes. I'm not a veteran, so I'm not going to speak to the trials and tribulations of being a soldier, and certainly the stress that comes along with it. But we know that a lot of veterans, a lot of soldiers do pick it up when they're on active duty. It's a habit that they get, and it's hard to quit when they leave and come back into civilian life. And the Veterans Administration and the FDA can do a lot better in terms of providing them with less harmful cessation opportunities to quit. Currently, I think there's a 1-800 number, for instance, or a small infographic to help you quit cold turkey. They may have worked at previous times, but given today's innovation, in terms of vaping, nicotine pouches, and so forth, there's a more successful way to quit smoking, to help them ladder down. And there are countries in this world like England and Sweden, for instance, who are finding great success using these methods to get people to quit smoking. And it's something that we're really advocating for the federal government to get on board and to allow our veterans to have these more access to these methods.
So one thing I'd kind of be curious to know, and obviously I think finding this data would be probably pretty difficult, maybe even impossible, but a lot of people that I knew that originally made the transition from tobacco products to like vape and things like that did so because they lost the ability to smoke in a lot of public spaces, whether that's, in their favorite sports bar or whatever. And then it was a very, very short period of time after that window that closed where now you can't vape in all the same places that you can't smoke. So I wonder if a lot of them even just went back to tobacco products and cigarettes and just were like, if I can't do the less harmful thing, I'm going to do the thing that I prefer. If I've never smoked, so that was never.
I haven't either.
Yeah, so I'm throwing out words that people are probably watching or listening, being like, "No, I don't prefer it. It's
so
just
we don't know what we're talking about.
Cheaper or more available or whatever." But I'd be curious to know how many of them were like, I'm on this path now, and then as soon as that window closed and they had to, go a mile away from the building or whatever. When that happened, they just were like, you know what, never mind. I tried, and now I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, that would be a fascinating data point to know. I don't know that either. I'm hopeful that they didn't go back to smoking cigarettes and stuck with the less harmful. But that'd be a great data point to understand.
Were you ever a smoker yourself?
No, I was not. Although being from Wyoming, chewing tobacco was a big deal. So I'm hopeful my mother won't watch this and realize that I did chew for a number of years, but have since quit.
That's good. Did you quit cold turkey, or was there something that
I did? Yeah, I did quit cold turkey.
Did your wife make you quit?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought.
We had a conversation with Emery King, if you know who he is, a couple months ago, and Nona asked him if his kids asked him, like if they came up and said, "Dad, we want you to quit smoking," if he would. And he was like, "Yeah, I would right now. I'd throw it away right now." So I wonder how many people out there are just waiting for that,
that loved one, that wife,
mm-hmm.
that child, whatever the case may be, to actually quit. Have a reason to quit.
Yeah.
Have a reason to quit.
Well,
it's tough. It's not easy.
But. So I hear a lot of people, and I think in the last couple, probably at least last decade, because you have people that like to post their successes and wins on social media, that they say, I haven't had a drink in 3 years, and they post it, all the time, how, the day countdown and stuff like that. I wonder if making that popular as well, like, quitting smoking. I quit cold turkey X amount of days ago, and, I feel great and I'm back in the gym or whatever. I think, maybe starting a trend of some kind like that, where it's just as popular to quit drinking as it is to quit smoking.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of peer pressure we want, right? The supportive, uplifting kind of content.
Well, you're in PR, so you can definitely find somebody to push that.
That's what Smokeless Vets is all about. It's enabling, and supporting the community of veterans to do just this, and active duty, their families, veterans. So we should get on it. Y'all can help us do that. Yeah.
She pitched a bunch of good ideas to Matt Kenny. That's actually one of our better performing episodes recently, was with Matt. And, she brought up posing something, how people...
A challenge.
Yeah. They would do the fitness challenges, like everybody do 100 push-ups. And then you got into like the squats and things like that. And everybody had like a measurable, if they were doing it for weight loss or they were trying to achieve some other goal, fit into their clothes from high school or whatever the case may be, identifying the way to do that.
Could you fit into your clothes from high school?
No, absolutely not.
Is that for me?
No, man.
No.
I'm 100 pounds heavier than I was in high school.
I'm just giving him a hard time. Yeah. He has been saying since we got together, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose weight." I'm still waiting 4 years later.
I'm back in the gym. I have slowly been losing weight.
I'm still waiting 4 years later. I love you.
Love you too. So anything else? Anything on your mind before we wrap up here? Anything?
No, just I will say, for a closing thought, that to come back to this, to the importance of voting, with coming up on November 5th, there's weeks to go, to not just get out the vote yourself, but to drag that friend that we all have or two who complain about everything but don't do a damn thing about it, to drag them to the poll too. There is a challenge happening right now, and it is a Vote for America challenge. It's starting to pick up speed across social media.
What's the hashtag for it?
Yeah, vote for the number 4 America. We've gotten a number of high-profile social media personalities to jump in, and we certainly welcome your help and participation in that. And spread the word, get out there. We need to make America feel like home again.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. Anything else?
No, I think that's a great closing.
Awesome.
Make America home.
Great.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate you coming on, and love to have you back, in the future, maybe after the dust settles here in a couple months, and kind of get a little AAR on how things went from your perspective. Yeah, we'll catch up with you if you want to hang tight right here after we close up the episode. Thanks everyone for watching. Ryan, thank you for coming on. Is there anywhere you want people to find you on social media or anything like that?
You can find me on Twitter, X, at Ryan Taylor DC.
At Ryan Taylor DC. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you.